In 1991, a professor verifies that his trial with hibernation is successful by awakening a chimpanzee who slept for 6 months. The next step, trying it on humans. Albert and Max step forward as volunteers. Albert, a biologist, seeks to contribute to human progress, while Max craves adventure and respite from his irate wife and daughter. During the briefing, the professor outlines that they'll hibernate for 3 years, warning of potential risks due to human physiology. Sneakily, the guys stash cigarettes in a flask before drifting off to sleep. Years later, they wake in a strange white room attended by women who serve them breakfast, bizarrely hard food, which turns out to be paste. The men, attributing the lack of flavor to hibernation, light up the contraband for a dessert, setting off alarms. The women douse them in foam, and a doctor, Lamia, arrives with her assistant to check on them. The women reveal the truth. There's no professor, his experiments abandoned due to another war that occurred, and they've slept for 53 years. Furthermore, all men were wiped out in the conflict, leaving Max and Albert bewildered and alone. Attempting escape, they're shocked by the electrified door, awakening to realize they're part of a psychological test's second phase, testing their reactions. Max remains incredulous at the absence of men and questions how the women reproduce. Lamia, overhearing, explains parthenogenesis, a real form of reproduction without fertilization found in various animals. Meanwhile, another woman from the genetics faction enters Lamia's workspace, tampering with her belongings, expressing regret that Lamia left genetics for Aereo. She suggests handing over the men to genetics. Later, the TV in Albert and Max's room broadcasts a segment on parthenogenesis, prompting Albert to educate Max on the process. Lamia defends their method, but Max accuses them of indoctrinating children. That night, Max and Albert reflect on their lost years and departed loved ones, vowing never to undergo freezing again. They console each other, finishing their alcohol. While watching TV, Max sees potential for paradise in their situation, but Albert admonishes him for trivializing their predicament. At that moment, Lamia checks on their health, and Max responds with a flirtatious remark that Lamia doesn't quite grasp. He then asks if they could stroll or dance together. As he moves closer, Max steals a kiss from Lamia, startling her and causing her to forcefully push him to the ground before storming off. Alone, Lamia realizes she can't shake thoughts of the kiss, sensing something awakening within her. Eventually, the men are permitted to leave their room and are taken to the Bio-Sanctuary, where they encounter mutated animals affected by radiation. They discover a tree bearing 2 small apples and consume them. They're then approached by Her Excellency, the society's leader. When she inquires about their age, genetics member Emma explains they're technically 86, but hibernation halted their physical aging. As Max attempts a proper introduction, guards misinterpret his gesture as aggression and subdue him. Her Excellency intervenes, instructing the guards to release Max and imparting some history. The professor invented the M-bomb, intended to temporarily suppress male genes to end the war, but it ultimately eradicated men. Max suggests he and Al can facilitate reproduction now, but the women show no interest. Her Excellency points to the tree, symbolizing the tale of Adam and Eve, a reminder not to lose paradise. Angered by the missing apples, she orders the men confined. Later, Albert suggests they escape, believing there must be a better world beyond. Meanwhile, Lamia remains preoccupied with thoughts of the kiss, prompting her to seek counsel from the Elder, the sole individual who recalls the old world. Lamia offers a jar of strawberry jam to coax the Elder into sharing stories about men's role in the former society. She finds herself admitting a fascination with Max and Albert, leading the Elder to suggest Lamia might be falling in love. Concerned about the men's fate, Lamia explains they'll undergo naturalization, essentially surgery to transition into women. The Elder vehemently opposes this, stating it's worse than death, as men represent the last hope for a return to normalcy. Later, Max and Albert are caught observing a class indoctrinating women with falsehoods about the past. Lamia requests their consent for naturalization, but they adamantly refuse. Albert insists on freedom as a condition for cooperation. After Lamia departs, the ceiling suddenly opens, revealing a vast assembly of women observing them. What should have been a trial becomes a dispute between the genetics and Arco factions. Arco advocates for forced surgery, while genetics proposes killing them for experimentation. As the women vote, Max and Albert devise an escape plan, initiating kisses with the guards. A shock and hormonal surge render the guards unconscious. By the time Arco secures a victory for surgery by a single vote, the duo has vanished. As they roam the building, Max and Albert kiss any woman who intervenes, rendering them unconscious. They stumble upon an elevator and descend to various floors, encountering one strange sight after another. Deep underground, they stumble upon the M shaft along with scattered items, a boot, a bottle of alcohol, and a newspaper from 1993 detailing the war's onset. The security team soon tracks them down, prompting the duo to flee through a waste chute, landing in an abandoned area inhabited by anarchists. Here, they witness forbidden pleasures like music, dancing, and intimate encounters between women. Max and Albert unwittingly draw the attention of two rebels who mistake them for government spies. Simultaneously, the security team arrives, initiating a chaotic clash. In the confusion, the rebels panic and the guards struggle to discern their targets, allowing Max and Albert to slip away amidst the turmoil. They temporarily part ways but reunite at the elevator, only to encounter Lamia. She proposes showing them the outside world, but Max hesitates, suspicious of her motives. Albert persuades him that it's their best opportunity, so they agree to accompany her. Lamia leads them to a peculiar room equipped with a periscope. Peering through it, they discover that women have been living underground because the surface is dark and desolate, with no hope of improvement in sight. The system consistently registers at least 300 units of radiation due to the M-bomb's aftermath, rendering the outside world uninhabitable. Despite this, Max and Albert prefer risking exposure outside over remaining underground. Disappointed by their refusal to cooperate, Lamia accuses them of disloyalty and alerts security, leading to their recapture. Emma and another woman commend Lamia's cunning plan, rewarding her with a promotion pin. However, Lamia feels neither happiness nor pride. She's then instructed to surrender all data collected on the men, as genetics will assume her role following their attempted escape, branding them as dangerous. Furious, Lamia protests, especially since she had been researching a dissertation on men. Emma taunts her, suggesting they'll take that too, prompting Lamia to toss away the pin in frustration. Meanwhile, Albert and Max are prepared for the procedure, where their organs will be transplanted into older women and their bodies synthesized for nutritional purposes due to protein scarcity. Shockingly, one of the surgeons turns out to be Max's resentful daughter, now aged and bitter about her father's abandonment. Before the procedure begins, Lamia clandestinely enters the operating room, seeking revenge on genetics by disrupting the surgery and aiding the men's escape. As the trio reaches the elevator, Albert suddenly collapses due to anesthesia injection. He awakens in 1994, encountering the professor who lauds the experiment's success. Albert shares his dream of a world without men, a dream Max admits having as well. Perplexed, the professor dismisses the possibility, jolting Albert back to reality in the elevator with Max and Lamia. Lamia leads them back to the periscope room, where she coerces the guards to remove their special suits. Upon donning the suits themselves, Lamia attempts to use the system to ascend to the surface, only to discover it requires a password known only to Her Excellency. Frustrated, Max accidentally utters a curse, which surprisingly serves as the password. At that moment, Lamia decides to accompany them and dons a suit. The trio cautiously explores the eerie surroundings until they encounter a seemingly impenetrable barrier, which they discover is merely fabric. Crossing it, they uncover the truth. The outside world is intact, and the wasteland they saw on the periscope was a fabricated illusion to manipulate the underground base's inhabitants. Delighted, they explore the lush nature and bask in the sunlight until they realize their suits are running out of oxygen. Max, witnessing a bird flying freely, removes his suit, confirming the air's safety. Following suit, they press on and find a wall which they scale to discover a beautiful house. They settle in comfortably, marveling at the fresh food's exquisite taste, surprising Lamia. Meanwhile, in the underground base, Emma bravely volunteers to pursue the trio, donning a suit to track them down. Eventually, she locates the house and spots the trio, but her suit begins to fail, causing her to lose consciousness. Albert, seeing her collapse, carries her into the house to help her recover. Upon waking, Emma demands to return to the base, struggling against Albert in an attempt to escape. Their scuffle inadvertently triggers the TV, broadcasting a government-sponsored podcast announcing Lamia and Emma's supposed deaths. Furthermore, a fabricated interview shows fake versions of Max and Albert claiming contentment with their new female identities. This revelation shakes Emma, realizing she's been manipulated by the government's propaganda. She agrees to stay with Albert, while Max escorts Lamia to a bedroom for privacy. Later, Max and Albert hear the elevator's arrival and hide, observing Her Excellency entering the house, which, to their surprise, belongs to her. When she discovers two dirty glasses, she investigates further, leading to a confrontation where Albert and Max overpower her. However, in the struggle, clothing, tears, and prosthetics are dislodged, revealing a hidden truth. To their astonishment, Her Excellency is revealed to be a man in disguise. He explains that he was only 4 when the war ended and the League of Women took control. The few remaining boys were subjected to surgery, but his mother concealed him to protect him. As he grew up, he adopted a female guise and eventually rose to lead the League. Despite the radiation not being as severe as expected, societal conditioning made it difficult to challenge the status quo. Albert and Max propose a deal. They'll keep his true identity secret in exchange for permission to live in the house with Lamia and Emma. Sometime later, Max and Albert clandestinely return to the underground base disguised as female lab workers. They discreetly add their genetic material to the flasks in the incubation center, hoping to alter the future. 9 months later, a nurse wraps a newborn in blankets and is startled to discover a baby boy, signaling the potential beginning of change. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.